Okay, hey guys. Finally we got this worked out. It's been one heck of a day trying to get this figured out, but I'm super excited to have with me Joey Santore from his YouTube channel, Crime Pays but Botany Doesn't. So we're gonna have a fun discussion with him. We're gonna find out who he is and what got him to what he's doing right now, and then we're gonna answer a whole bunch of questions. So Joey, if you want to go ahead and say hi.
Hello, how you doing? How are you?
Great. How are you doing with your shoulder? Is it feeling a little bit better now?
no, no, it feels terrible.
Oh, I'm
But
sure.
it's
Oh,
good. I mean, it's just sore. It just feels like mild cramping. I mean, shoulder dislocations are a fucking terrible injury. But
oh
should I
yeah.
not swear? Should I limit the? I'll try to limit the profanity.
No, you don't have
But
to. Be yourself. Just be
but
yourself.
I'm just making a cup of tea in my kitchen. But yeah, my shoulders. It's been dislocating for years. So I knew I was gonna have to get this surgery at some point. So I'm just doing it now. But it was luckily the doctor was pretty cool. They were listening to the Beatles in the operating room when I went in, so it didn't feel like it didn't feel like this super stiff, humorless setup. Everyone that was in the operating room was pretty cool. So, but it's just it just feels like mild cramping. It's just hard to sleep at night. My arm's in a sling, and I'm not much of a stay at home and watch Netflix type of person. So
Yeah, I don't
it's
know.
been kind of hard. It's been kind of hard to just sit still. So I'm, going out and just walking around my city for hours on end while I'm injured.
Oh,
So
that's awesome. Well, at least it's not your foot. That's the injury I had, and it kept me in bed for quite a while.
yeah,
So you're
yeah,
lucky there.
yeah.
Okay, so Joey, what is your background? What got you into botany? I, from my understanding, you didn't go, you're not educated. You're like self-educated. I'm not going to say you're not educated. You're obviously very educated on the topic of botany, and what got you into this and got you to start this channel?
Uh, I don't know. I guess I just. Yeah, I mean, I don't know where to start. I grew up. I grew up pretty discontent and kind of at war with everything around me since I was a kid, and I got the punk rock, and that kind of went with me throughout most of my childhood, um, and then at some point, when I got older, I mean, I started traveling a lot when I was 19 or 20, just traveling around the country, and I started seeing a lot. I mean, I figured that was, I did the kind of thing that most kids get suckered into out of high school, which is to go to college directly out of high school, which I think is a terrible idea. And I did that for about 2 years, and I think I was going for sociology or some sort of lame endeavor like that. No offense to anybody that's into sociology, but I just realized I didn't really like it. In the class I liked the most, I took like an ecology class, and the good hard tangible science stuff is what kind of got me.
Hey,
Christine.
Christine.
Interesting, but I didn't really go anywhere with it till years later. So I
He's
realized
echoing.
I was wasting my time and money going to school, and I decided I wanted to travel for 2 or 3 years. And so I did that, and I was traveling for 2 or 3, like I said, actually about 3 years, a little over 3 years, and I wouldn't stay any place longer than 2 months. And I was with normally, I would travel alone, but sometimes I'd be with other people. But there was this whole kind of little, what do you call it, a subculture or what? But just this whole little group of friends we knew that would travel this way. We had these little, we had ways to get around and live affordably. I mean, none of this was funded by large bank accounts. I think, for most of my life, up until I was like, 30, or maybe like 25, maybe 24, 25. When I had out the railroad, I never had more than like a few $100s in my bank account. So we would travel. I would just traveling around. I would just hang out in libraries, hang out in coffee shops. This is pre-internet, so if you wanted to use the internet, or pre-smartphones rather. So if you wanted to use the internet, you had to go to the library, and then of course, if you were in the library, why not, get a stack of books and just post up at a table in the library was just a good place to loiter too. And so I would, we'd do that. I always had this kind of addiction to information. And then at some point I just started realizing how little I knew about the world around me, the physical world around me. And I think I found some like astronomy textbook in the garbage in Tucson when I was passing through Tucson, Arizona. And I was reading it, and I was reading about spectroscopy or something, and it just blew my mind. I mean, it blew my mind that, I guess, just how interesting science can be, that people could tell what the composition of a planet's atmosphere was by shining the light that was reflected off of it through a prism. And
Wow.
And so that kind of opened my eyes, and I realized how much I didn't know, and then I wanted to learn. And then, you're traveling around, you'd see these weird lines on the side of the mountains, and you realize I didn't know how those were formed, how that came to be. So I just I realized there was so much mystery around me, and I wanted to figure it out. And that kind of got me on the path. And then I got into I lived in California at this point for like 6 years. California was home base when I was out traveling, and I had never seen redwood trees. I mean, I'd probably seen them, I just didn't know what they were. And then when I finally learned what they were, and that you could grow them from a little cutting, then I did it just for shits and giggles to see if I could get this tree to grow. I just took a little sprout off the base of a tree, put it in some water,
Mhm.
and it formed roots, and then that kind of lit the fire for trees. I mean, I was initially into trees when I got into botany, and conifers primarily because they're such an old lineage. They're really, I think there's only like 550 species of conifer, and they were the dominant life form on Earth during the Jurassic. I mean, there were no flowering plants back then. It was all ferns and cycads and members of the redwood family and the Araucaria family, and the predominant, the larger amount of diversity in conifers is actually in the tropics. I don't think a lot of people know that. They hear about conifers and they think,
High mountains.
Christmas trees and all this woo-woo. They associate it with pines and spruce and all that shit. Those are actually a relatively newer lineage of conifers. Newer, I mean, 80 million years old, but still pretty new compared to redwoods or araucarias. So then I just, getting into conifers, that kind of got me indirectly into a thing called phylogenetics and taxonomy, which is basically just the study of how life has evolved on Earth. And I started just tying the pieces together and just the more I learned, the more fucking fascinated I got. And I realized holy shit, this is the origin story. This is basically how we got here, how everything around us came into being, how mountains got built, and the more I learned, I couldn't believe they weren't teaching this. I mean, I guess they teach it in some schools, but not in. I mean, this should be shit you learn in elementary school,
Well, we did at a simpler level. We totally did in school, but I went to a fairly high-end school, like up in Park City, Utah. The rich people go there. I wasn't rich, but I think we got a better education than most places.
Yeah, but I don't know. I didn't learn this stuff till I was I guess in college. I certainly didn't learn it in high school. And I think a lot of people just don't. Most of us are just so self-concerned with that which directly affects us. Rarely do we ever peek our nose above the wall that surrounds our own little personal world to look outside beyond it. And
that's so true. That is absolutely true. Yes.
The more I did that, I just got totally. It's what it really is the birth of consciousness. It's humans being aware of their place on the planet and in the universe. I think that's what's so wonderful about science, and I see. That's the tragic thing though too, because we live in an age where science is so disrespected, not just by the right. The left also does it too, but it's probably mostly the right wing.
I agree. Yeah.
I see it coming from both sides. I see a bunch of goofy shit on the left too. But I guess that's what I'm trying to do now. I guess just get people to pay attention to to this stuff, outside of our own little small bubble. And I don't care about. I mean, the YouTube thing blew up. I don't really care about being famous or any of that shit. If I can be comfortable making a living doing this and showing people this stuff, that's cool. But the main goal is to get people to look at the world differently. I want people to get excited about learning about the world, and realize that it doesn't have to be from this high esteemed fart sniffing ivory tower background. I mean, we live the glory of the fucking internet, like it or not, it's here to stay. You can use it to buy Snuggies and fucking, shit from the Sky Mall catalog, or you can use it to teach yourself astronomy or organic chemistry. It's up to you. It's just what you decide to use it on. And do you want to be just a stupid ape, or do you want to use, what that,
I love that.
what that simian brain has given you the power to you want to use it your brain and your consciousness to full capacity. So I mean, don't get me wrong, I like doing stupid shit too. I've got a 9-year-old sense of toilet humor, but I also like learning about the world around me. So
that's fabulous. I think that's what I love so much about watching your channel, is because you're teaching people and you're not being stuffed shirt about it. You're funny, you're just crass, like you describe yourself, you're crass, but that makes it more interesting. It's easier to soak it in than someone speaking monotone, lecturing about these things, right?
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of science communication has failed.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I think that's what I'm doing is, I mean, make no mistake about it, a lot of that shit is very conscious. Like, I'm trying to offend those who would be offended by it. I'm very
like grandpas.
Oh, I mean, everyone from the racist grandpas, and I say that jokingly. I'm not labeling someone a racist because they disagree with me. I'm just joking around. It's the real thing. Racist grandpas. I get these fucking yahoos commenting on the YouTube channel all the time. Some fucking guy in Iowa or a basement in Arizona somewhere, writes a comment about how global warming isn't happening and the sun is what causes all the fucking.
Oh, grand solar minimalists. Gotta love those assholes.
And then you ask him about it. Okay, well, what's the grand solar minimum? Or are you really aware of how much CO2 volcanoes put into the atmosphere? And they have nothing to say. They're just parroting some obsolete scientific fact they read from some fucking turd like Tony Heller or any of these
Piers Corbin, Tony Heller.
These creepy fucking old guys with 3 chins,
Right.
But someone sent me Tony Heller's YouTube channel a month or two ago, and I watched it, and I was fucking appalled. I mean, I watched this guy struggle during one of his, he's one of like the chief climate deniers that, and I think the thing that's a shame about the United States, and you realize this isn't everywhere, but the issue's been so politicized, it's such a right versus left-wing issue, and, the left fucks up when they go into they start saying all these apocalyptic 12 years, super melodramatic, and I believe it. I agree, it is a melodramatic issue, but you're just giving ammunition to the other side when you act it's so outraged, and it's like it's a soap opera, and then they just mock you. I mean, they're not going to agree with you anyway. They're not.
Yeah.
It's like the point of calling a bully. They don't give a shit. Doesn't and that's the thing. But so the left fucks up, of course. They don't really understand the issue. They understand the gravity of it, but they don't really understand how it works. So then they just start saying all this shit about how it's, the world's going to end, blah, blah. And then when the world doesn't end, I mean, a lot of shit happens, climate cycles, weather patterns get messed up, sea levels rise, plant distributions change. It's very real and tangible, but the world is not ending. There's not fire raining down from the sky. And so when there's not fire raining down from the sky, all the grandpas see, look, see, I told you it's not real. Oh, what next? You're just all the climate alarmists, and they.
Yeah, but it's not going to happen all at once. It is happening, mind you, but it's not happening all at once in a ball of fire. So
part of the reason I get so mad about the climate thing is because I fucking see it. I mean, I've traveled at this point to 3 different continents. I've traveled all over extensively throughout Mexico and throughout Western North America. I mean, I see it happening, and to have some fucking guy named Bob, who's never left his little gated community in Iowa, tell me that it's not happening and that I'm not seeing it. I mean, I end up feeling fucking gaslit, and it's, when I look at this guy and I'm like, what the fuck does this motherfucker know about any of it? Like, he doesn't have any understanding of any of this. He doesn't have any understanding of geologic time. I mean, almost every mass extinction, save for the KP, has been tied to rising CO2 levels. This is a very well-known phenomenon that happens occasionally on planet Earth. This is the first time that I'm aware of that it's been caused by a species of organism, us, that's living on planet Earth. In the past, I think it's mostly been, the CO2, these massive dumps of CO2 in the atmosphere have been caused mostly by hotspot volcanism or flood basalts. But I mean, it's a very well-known, it's fucking Earth, it's Earth's thermostat. It's a well-known phenomenon, so, to hear these clowns say things that are just patently false and full of shit, it pisses me off. I mean, it does. And not because I think there's necessarily even any hope of fixing it or because I'm whatever, but I just, to see these blatant fools get so worked up about it, and they're so obviously just parroting all this right-wing shit. They don't know a thing about what they're talking about. It pisses me off, whether they're talking about climate change or whether it's like I get just as pissed off if my truck stopped working and I knew it was because the alternator was broken and I had some fucking, dude with 3 chins from Iowa telling me that it's not because the alternator's broken, there's something else wrong. Maybe it's the fuel pump or it's the same thing, If you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, shut up and sit down and maybe, look into it a little bit more, learn something. But you don't have any desire to learn. This is just an ideological issue for you, So get fucked. Stop commenting on my fucking videos. So,
get educated.
I like conflict and I like being able to attack these motherfuckers and make fun of them. So I don't know. I'm kind of at odds. Do I block them or do I respond? It's like
right.
I can't keep my mouth shut. I should learn to keep my mouth shut.
I have a hard time doing that as well. So I want to battle with them, but I don't want to battle with them because I should. But so in your travels, what is the most concerning thing you've seen environmentally?
I see. I mean, we're in the middle of a mass extinction. I see the human footprint growing and growing, and nothing's going to stop it. Like, nothing is going to stop it. We don't place any value on anything. Maybe individuals do, but as a species, we're still barely conscious. We're still barely aware of any other living thing besides ourselves. I mean, we're not. It sounds corny to say this, but we're not stewards. We're not being. We've conquered nature. We waged a war on it. We won. Now the thing to do is to try to live at peace with it. We proved we can. We can control it. We've proved that, in the end, it's kind of no match for us. We can cure its diseases. We can farm its land, whatever. I mean, all these people say, Mother Nature will have the last say. I mean, yeah, maybe. I mean, she's not doing too well right now, to be honest with you. She's kind of getting her ass kicked. The thing to do, I think, as a species, there's that whole half-Earth movement, all that E.O. Wilson thing, set aside half the planet and just don't fuck with it. I mean, that's what I would like to see happening. Just treat that rest of at least a half the planet as just a living, functioning, breathing life support system for us. That's not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah.
It's a fucking pipe dream. But I see this, I mean, everywhere I go, I see plants that I'm sure aren't going to be there in 40 years. I see habitats that aren't going to be there in 40 years. I was just in Chile. We were up on this probably 11,000 feet in the Andes, east of Santiago, the Andes Mountains. And, I mean, fuck, that whole area is in a drought. Their snowpack is, a fraction of what it once was. The lower elevations, the woodlands are dying. The ridge tops are dying. They're still growing grapes. it's a really obscene dichotomy to see these bright green fields of grapes and avocados, and then everything around them is dead. I mean, it's just brown, dying, woodland. But I was up in the Andes, and we're looking at these incredible plants, these little violets, these rosulate violets, these rose, they got a basal rosette. The Andean violets are fucking wild. They look like cacti or something. They don't even look like violets. I normally don't care about the genus Viola, but here it was pretty incredible. I mean, this is like this whole clad of violets, members of the violet family that have this really weird geometric pattern that they're fucking incredible. And, I'm looking at this plant, and then, probably 100 meters in the background is like this super tacky ski resort, and you can bet your ass no one there gives a fuck about these things. Probably doesn't even know they're here.
That's so sad. That's so sad. Oh my God.
I think they could. I think they're, in my experience, you just have to show people this shit and give it to them in the right venue, which is what I'm trying to do. Mm-hmm. And they get excited about it. The venue that it's been given to them in the past, either through some super stiff old man, who's got, 9 fucking degrees after his name, that hasn't worked. Mm-hmm. The soft-spoken nature boy with the ponytail and the flute music and the acoustic, that hasn't worked either. It doesn't get people excited about this shit.
Right.
So maybe a crass, profanity-laden embodiment of a West Side Italian, like
I love it.
Pre-geriatric West Side Italian will work, I mean, I guess I'm just doing this for fun. I kind of have nothing to lose. I don't give a fuck if people like me. I don't care if I piss them off. I'm not trying to make family-friendly material. I'm not trying to make people happy. I'm trying to get them excited about plants, because plants are the reason that I probably haven't killed anybody yet. They're the reason that I'm not in jail. They're probably the reason that I'm so in love with the world. If I didn't know this stuff was out here, I don't know where I'd be. I'd probably be a lot worse off,
Well, you definitely captured my attention with your videos, and I love it when you bring in the animals too, and you're sitting there yelling at the animals, talking to them, not really yelling at them, talking to them, and it's fun. It's like, it's cool that you get to see all that. But I see that destruction here in my own state. I don't travel very far. I've never been out of the country, but I can see it with my own eyes. I don't understand how other people can't see the destruction and the destruction of nature, and seeing it go away bit by bit by bit every single year.
Right. There's no stopping it. No, the tumor just keeps growing. I mean, what kind of blows my mind is, even if you don't care about green things, I don't know how you couldn't. They're the fucking basis of the entire food chain of the planet we live on. But if you're not amused by floristics, by botany, by any of this stuff, at least you got to admit it's nice to just have open space, mm-hmm. And you'd think that'd be something that people would want, If anything, the more buildings, the more shitty streets and retail centers and, this kind of futureless, our whole infrastructure is set up for a car right now, which is fucking awful. I like cars for long road trips, but, using them to get around or go get groceries, I just feel trapped. Mm-hmm. It's like being trapped in a can. I hate it. I'd much rather walk to something that's close or whatever. Anyway, you think that even if you don't have a appreciation for green things, you'd at least appreciate having an absence of people, or just room to breathe, or just room to fucking stretch and spread out, or look off into the distance for half a mile and not see anybody. But the way our economy is set up, open space is just a resource to be extracted like anything else. So anything that's any vacant lot, any hillside that's just an oak woodland, it's all a target. There's no stopping it. Unless you put regulations or much harder change the value system of the culture. But it's hard to convince an ape that's only going to be alive for 80 years at most and should give a shit about the long-term future of its surroundings, So, I don't know. It's fucked up. I mean, this whole development economy we have now, this endless growth economy, is pretty obscene, and it sucks too because a lot of these buildings that are getting put up look like shit anyway. They just look like giant, I call them giant external hard drives.
Right.
They're not built like they were 100 years ago, where
they have character.
Architects would put ornament, or they'd put, they'd embellish these buildings, realizing that the public's going to have to look at them probably for the next 50 or 60 years. They don't do that anymore. They're just these kind of glass air conditioner buildings. They look like a giant appliance,
Oh, they're terrible. I can't stand. I am not a city person. I've always hated the city. So when I see like the small town I moved to is just getting more and more buildings, more and more development, more and more big fancy houses and all that, it's horrible for me to even digest when I'm seeing animals being run out of where they lived previously, and then they're treated like nuisances because you invaded their land. That's really hard for me to take personally.
Yeah, it's gross.
It is. So I'm trying to see. So I wanted to talk about your guerrilla gardening, your illegal planting. Talk about that. What kind of things do you try to plant in areas, and have you gotten in trouble for that before? What's happening with that?
I started. I still do that occasionally. My main, I was mostly a lot of that stuff I started doing 7 or 8 years ago, and I just mainly because the city had failed so poor. They've done such a poor job of trying to plant in this. There used to be a freeway on that boulevard where that video was shot. There was a double-decker freeway. It came down in the 1989 earthquake. And the city had tried to plant a bunch of stuff there, but, they just didn't really know what they were doing. The soil was really compacted. They didn't prepare the soil at all. They just kind of stuck these. I hate to think of what it must have cost them. It must have cost them a couple $100,000 at least. But, half of what they planted died. It wasn't adapted to long, dry summers. It wasn't adapted to the saline irrigation, the recycled water that they use. And so a bunch of stuff had died. So I just said, well, fuck it. When I got into conifers, I just started growing a lot of them just for the hell of it. I didn't really know. I guess I was a lot more into propagation back then. And I didn't have any goal in mind when I started growing this stuff. I just figured it was a cool way to get to know these plants I was so excited about. And it was kind of like this. It was kind of like the same creative urge, I had when I used to make art or draw or do graffiti or any of that. And so I started growing a lot of trees, and I was volunteering at Striving Arboretum in San Francisco a lot. I would go there and just hang out on my days off, and I'd plant stuff. I'd collect seeds when I was on my travels, or I'd get people to ship me seeds. I got some dude to ship me seeds of the Chilean redwood, the Chilean alerce tree, Fitzroy cuprossoides. Mm-hmm. We grew a ton of those in San Francisco, and a couple of them are actually planted out in the garden over there right now. But I was always growing stuff, and so I was growing stuff first, and then I realized I could plant. I had this stuff out. I could spare a few, and I could spare to risk losing a few by planting them out in on the boulevard in my neighborhood. And I had friends that would get houses. Like a friend would rent a house back when you could still afford to do that. You can't afford to do that in my neighborhood now because it's so expensive here. The neighborhood's changed grotesquely in the last 10 years.
Yeah, gentrification everywhere. That's why there's so many homeless people. You talk about the homeless people too, which is fantastic. I have to get to other people's questions too, but that's my last one. But,
shit. So I'm kind of rambling. I just,
No, that's cool. I didn't even have to ask most of my questions because you already went into them before I even had a chance. So that was cool. So.
But anyway, so I just started throwing stuff in the ground, and that was just trial and error from there. I'd see what would die, and then I'd sit there and think about it for a while. Like, why did this thing croak? What could it be? Did it rot? Did it not get enough water? did a dog piss on it? What was it? And it slowly, over just trial and error, just thinking about things, I just realized what worked and what didn't. And I've been doing it so it's just slowly expanded. I got hit one block, those things do pretty well. I move on to the next block, etc. It pissed some people off. There was some yuppie neighborhood group.
Mm-hmm.
This is like 5 years ago. They got really mad at what I was doing because I think it was they put all this ego in. It was like a point of pride for them what they did, and they were called Friends of Mandela Parkway, and it was a point of pride for what they were doing. They planted a bunch of rose bushes and trees that died. They were well intentioned. They just didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
But they got really mad that someone else was kind of stepping on their corner.
Oh my gosh.
So it was really weird. And there was like all these old people that were really like territorial about it, and you could tell it was just about pride and ego. And I was like, that's cool that you did this, but I actually live here and I'm going to be here for another decade or two at least. I'd like to be able to walk past a living fucking garden rather than just a dying, your dying failed experiment.
And what did they say to that? Or did you actually tell them that? Were you just thinking?
No, I told them that. I mean, they were in cahoots, man. We couldn't really talk to them. They told me I was being selfish, and they went on some crazy trip, and I was just like, all right, and I told them, I don't think that's the case. You guys planted stuff that's not doing well here. I actually study this stuff. I'm obsessed with it. And they were really mad. They told me to stop doing it, and I said no, and then we just parted ways. And I haven't heard anything from them in the last 5 years, but I've kept doing what I do, and all the stuff I've planted is like 20 or 30 feet tall now.
Awesome. That's cool. I love that. And I love how much you love the nature. Okay, so let's get into some questions. The first question I was asked, which is really from one of your family. He wants to know what gave you the idea to put that tattoo of a ruler on your finger? What's the story behind that?
Because I'd be reading botanical descriptions of plants that I was studying, and everything was always in millimeters and centimeters and decameters, decimeters, and I didn't really have any reference for what a millimeter was. I mean, you don't really, especially being in the United States, you don't use a metric system. So I was like, fuck it, what's a better way to do it than just get the tattoo, and not using that flesh real estate at the moment anyway. I might as well put it. So I did that, and it's been totally useful. Anytime I'm reading a description for a plant now, and it says flowers 5 to 8 millimeters, I just look at my finger.
That's awesome. I love it. No, I've seen you use it in your shows, so I'm just like, was that purposely just for the botany, or was there another reason? So it's cool that it's used for recognition of plants. So anyway, you guys, if you want to ask a question, please put a Q so I can see it. I'm going to go through the questions I already have on here. Let's see, Val, from the comments and the other stream I did when when we had to reschedule. I just wanted to let everyone know what was going on. It says, if you have time, ask him if he thinks that plants can have relative experience, i.e. latest scientific research that measured tomatoes and tobacco plants with high frequency microphones and that they screamed when cut or messed with. Have you heard that scientific report?
That's a little, I think that's taking liberties with the data a little bit. I mean, I don't know. I mean, is there a stress response when an organism's wounded? I think any organism, even a bacteria, would give signs that, they'd indicate a stress response. I don't know if it necessarily means that they're feeling sentient beings. Maybe they are. I mean, to be honest, whether they are or aren't, it's not going to change the respect and love I have for them. It's kind of one of those questions like, is there a God? I don't know. Probably not. I don't really give a shit either way. It doesn't really affect me. I'm going to try to be a good person because I want to, encourage good in other people, not because I want to get through the fucking pearly gates when I get older. So, or, it's like, right. Was 9/11 a conspiracy? I don't know. Probably not. There are a bunch of religious nuts all over the world who all want to kill each other and anybody else involved in said game. It doesn't matter. It could be, probably not. I don't know. It doesn't affect me. I guess that's how I feel about the whole, are plants sentient beings or not? It's cool to think about, if I don't smoke weed, but if you're, doing bongers with your friends at night, maybe you want to talk, but I don't think it really has any bearing. I would go with probably no. I don't think they have a nervous system, anything like ours, but certainly they probably,
they probably have some reaction.
They produce stress response. They produce more chemicals in response to the presence of herbivores. There's a lot going on there. It's just, it's the ways in which humans think about things. We tend to anthropomorphize them. I don't think it's still cut and dry, I guess.
Agree. Okay, Anthony Davis asks, how do you know if an area to plant trees have enough soil depth? Many areas near Dallas have rather shallow soil and a lot of shale under at relatively shallow locations.
You got to dig. You got to get up and dig. Get a trenching shovel or a pickaxe and you got to see what that soil is like. And then sometimes you may not know. I mean, I guess just try and dig a hole, plant the tree, see if it lives. If it doesn't live, well, maybe it's the tree, maybe it's the soil, maybe it's the species living adapted there. If you don't have any luck with trees, grow some herbaceous perennials, grow some stilpium, some large growing composite, sunflower family members, grow some shrubs. There's all kinds of stuff. I mean, that's what I've been doing lately in my neighborhood is I kind of I still plant trees occasionally, but I kind of laid off that, and I've just been planting more, I guess, bushes, non-woody bushes, everything from woody to non-woody bushes, stuff that's going to produce flowers that birds will like, that'll get more insects there. The insects bring more birds, that feed on them, stuff like that. So, but yeah, to figure out what the soil is, you just got to check, You could also look at a geologic map maybe, or try to look for like anywhere there might be a road cut or a construction project. I'll walk by construction projects where they got to dig out a basement or something, and I'll look at the stratigraphy of the soil. Sometimes I'll just stop and check it out, and that's what's going on under there. Yeah, there's the water table, and there's a layer of limestone, and above that you got a whole bunch of topsoil, whatever. So,
all right,
yeah,
that works, I guess. But what do you? Check it out, see what there is. And Sandy from Environmental Coffee House channel, what are the best trees to plant in a Marcellus Shale area? She lives in upstate New York.
Oh shit. Christ, I'd imagine when you guys get summer rain, that's pretty cool. I would just look at what's a native, get a native lineup of what's growing around there already, and just I'd imagine lots of oaks. I'd imagine beeches. It's hard though with a lot of the oaks because a lot of them are getting taken out by disease, etc. But I wouldn't know. I guess what you would do is go to get a list of what grows native in that region, what trees do, and just read up on them. But I imagine there's a place where you got summer rainfall, you got to benefit over where I'm at. I got to just plant during the winter and hope they make it through the summer. So.
Tough, quit. Sorry, dog. Cool. Yeah. Okay. She has a follow up. What is the best fertilizer for acidic soil? She's the opposite problem that I have because, I've been very salty.
I don't know. I guess where I come from, the perspective I'm coming from is I don't want to have to do a lot of maintenance. So if I got a soil that's super acidic, I'm just going to plant stuff that's acid loving. A lot of stuff in the blueberry family, a lot of ericaceous stuff, the family Ericaceae. I guess it just depends on where you are. I've heard you can use lime, but overall, you're fighting a war you're not going to win. You might win it temporarily, by adding lime or something like that. But overall, I would just kind of, I guess you adapt to the land. Don't try to make the land adapt to you. That's what I'm saying. But you can, but it's just going to be labor intensive and a lot of money probably. So.
All right. Let's see. Do we have any? Let's see. What do we have?
Yeah, Scott Murtaugh's got one.
What's that? Scott Murtaugh has one? I didn't see it. Sorry,
It hasn't come up yet.
Oh, okay. I'll look for it. But in the meantime, Valhalla wants to know if you've had real maple syrup that comes out of trees in Vermont and Maine. Do you like real maple syrup? Okay, silly question, but Val, you're silly. There's Scott. See, okay. Did you hear that, Joey?
Yeah, maple syrup. And I think I did once. I was traveling through the Northeast, maybe in 2005 or six, and I think we had some. Yeah, it's delicious. You can't, it's like a real thing. It's not the high fructose hotel continental breakfast.
It's not Aunt Jemima.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's great. I love it. Thank the genus Acer, I guess.
There you go. Okay, Scott Marta says, or asks, we read a lot about microplastics in water ecosystems. Are there similar issues in plant uptake of those materials? Do you know?
No, not that I know of. They'd have to be really small to be absorbed by plant roots, and I don't think
they're in our air, though. They found microplastics in our air, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's mostly fibers. It's mostly acrylic fibers. Since there's so many, God, that's how I fucking hate polyester and acrylic fabrics. It's like that probably comprises, a quarter of the dust in my house just from blankets or whatever. But anyway, no, I don't think they affect. I don't think they affect plants that much.
Okay. Let's see. Anthony Davis, I'm seeing a lot of tall trees that look like huge green corn dogs. Actually, I just don't know what they call them. They are green year round. Huge corn dogs.
Probably Italian cypresses.
Oh, okay.
Another horticultural atrocity. They're like you see them in suburban neighborhoods in California. Yeah, I mean maybe it's something else, but I'm imagining that's the only thing it could be.
Okay. Let's see. I have other questions. See if Oz finds them before I do. Let's see. Other than trees and cactus, what is the largest plant in the world? Ask him about Joshua tree. Oh yeah, those are going extinct. They got one that is 4,000 years old. I've heard the largest organism in the world is a fungus that covers like 4 or 5 U.S. states. Do you consider fungus like mushrooms to be plants?
No, fungi are actually more closely related to animals.
Oh, that's interesting.
They're made out of a compound called chitin, CHITIN, which I believe is the same material that human fingernails are made out of. They're heterotrophic, meaning they eat other things. They don't produce their own food like plants. They digest their food. They respire. They metabolize their food. I mean, everything metabolizes its food with the aid of oxygen. But no, fungi are actually more closely related to animals. They're pretty cool. They're fucking weird. They're totally fascinating. My friend Alan Rockefeller would be the guy for the fungi questions. I'm not that well versed in fungi, but I think the largest fungi, the fungus he's talking about is a species of, why am I drawing a blank? It's a parasite. Somewhere in Oregon. They're called, oh god damn it. Yeah, I'm having like pre-geriatric senilia. I can't remember.
I get that all the time. I can't believe what you remember, so don't feel bad.
But yeah, Armillaria malea. I think that is the largest? I got the interweb at my fingertips there. Armillaria malea. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the largest one. The largest fungus is in Oregon. But for largest trees right now, or the oldest growing trees is bristlecone pine at 4,900 years. Those grow in mountains in Nevada, and there's actually some that grow west of Las Vegas. There's some that grow in central Nevada.
There's some in Utah too. They're in the high desert.
Yeah, there's some in southern Utah as well. They all grow at like 10,000 feet or more. But after that, I think you got Fitzroy cuprossoides, which I had mentioned previously. That's the Alerce tree in Chile, Patagonia, in Argentina, and Chile. I mean, a lot of the conifers, can live extremely long time. Giant sequoia dendron, gigantea lives, I think, 3,000. Some of them have been dated. Coast redwood, Sequoia sempervirens, has been dated at like 2,000 years. still pretty old, but and then some of the monkey puzzles, the southern hemisphere Araucaria is going to live up to 1,000, 2,000 years too.
Oh wow. What about like the aspen grows, because they're all like considered one organism and they can cover many like states too, right?
Yeah, they can live. I think the actual, that specific individual phenotype of a particular tree,
Mm-hmm.
an individual can live for a long time, but the above ground tissue only lives like 80 years. So they're constantly resprouting. They're clonal.
Mm-hmm.
Creosote, urea, tridentata in the deserts can do the same thing, but it's not technically considered the oldest because it's producing new material, on a relatively consistent basis,
Okay.
So
That makes sense.
oldest non-clonal trees are all the conifers, pretty much.
Right. Makes sense. Okay. Beverly Jensen wants to know about California's dying pine trees. Do you know anything about that?
Oh yeah, why did it happen? Well, I think we had a really bad drought between 2011 and 2015. It was really freaky, actually. I remember one January it didn't rain at all. It just felt 50 degrees, and people don't realize how fucked up the air gets here when it doesn't rain for a while. It's really disgusting. I mean, it's like a constant rain of particulates, of diesel exhaust and just plant debris, mostly vehicular exhaust from our car obsession. But this drought lasted for 4 years, and I mean, we're still seeing effects of it. It fucked up a lot of forests. They didn't die immediately. They, of course, responded a year or two later. But, I remember I was on Highway 108 with my ex, and she had gotten like a fucking coupon or something for some corny bed and breakfast. And so we went up there. It was something I'd never really ever do again, or I wouldn't have done in the first place had she not gotten this coupon. But we ended up there. And we're kind of like, all right, cool, we'll go take a hike. And we hiked around. I remember specifically where we had gone. It was right off the highway. And the forest was green at that point. It's like incredibly dry, especially since it was December, but it was still green. And then I went back there 6 months later, driving through to get to the east side of the Sierra Nevada. Mm-hmm. And that whole entire forest had died within 6 months, except for a few trees that had all browned. Wow. And I had never seen it happen that fast before. But I mean, it's, the pine beetles are native, but it doesn't get cold enough in the winter to kill them off anymore.
Right.
And then, of course, the way that a tree responds to pine beetles is by producing a ton of sap. Well, to produce a ton of sap, you have to have adequate access to a large enough reserve of moisture, which, of course, they don't have anymore since, or they didn't then because it had been, the fourth year of a 4-year-long drought. And so a lot of those trees they couldn't defend themselves. Their quote immune system, you can't really think of it like an immune system, but their response to pine beetles was not able to cope with the pine beetles, and so a lot of them died. And I mean, we're going to see more of that. These forests have changed. The landscape's changing here. I saw the same thing in Chile. The Atacama Desert spreading south. Mm. Rainfall patterns are all messed up. There's not really, there's no getting around it. No. The trend in California, we used to get rain in October, like early October. We don't get it till late November, December now, which means that that's already the driest time of year. So now those plants that have been adapted to that, they have to learn to hold on, just wait another 2 months to get rain. Just hang in there another 2 months to get rain. A lot of them can't do it. That's also why we've been getting these horrible wildfires too. I mean, when I first moved to California 20 years ago, I remember October was a rainy month. It would be rainy on Halloween. It certainly wouldn't be as dry as it was, and as it's been the last 10 years. And so, but like I said, the last 10 years, I mean, it either hasn't rained at all or the rains just come 2 months later than normal. And so, accompanied by that dryness, you get these brutal winds from the east. As that cold air is coming down off the mountains from the east, it blows west towards the Pacific Ocean, towards the valleys, and with wind like that, you're going to have a fire. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you have wind like that and and you have a high population density, you're going to have a fire. There's just no fucking way you're not going to. That wind is everything. That wind lights these. It'll turn a spark into an inferno so quick. Especially when everything is so dry and it still hasn't rained. So, that's what it's going to be. That's why I put a video up a month or two ago looking at where the campfire started, and that pissed off a lot of the grandpas.
Oh,
which
really?
I love doing. But they it's just they don't get it, man. I'm not just going. I wasn't just motivated by an emotional speech made by Greta Thunberg. I'm seeing this shit myself. I'm seeing it firsthand. Everyone I talk to, I got a lot of friends in academia. I have a lot of friends that study plant distributions, that study plants, that study biogeography. They're seeing this shit happen firsthand. I don't know a single one of them that doubts it, that doubts climate change is happening.
I don't know anyone who's a real scientist or anything who does doubt it. And so my best friends are, scientists and at least they teach science. So I give them more credibility than my uncle or my dad.
That's the funny thing, right? Is these people who deny it, they're such parodies of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Every time it's someone comment, it's never a woman. Never get a woman commenting saying that it's climate change is fake. It's always some dude. I guarantee he's always over the age of 30.
I live in Utah, so it's both men and women, though. Utah's terrible.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah,
so,
no, I'm sure there's women climate deniers. I'm just saying, from what I've seen, it's always the same guy. You go to that guy Tony Heller's YouTube page, it's all men commenting. Oh, you're right, Tony. Boy, if only the scientists would listen to you.
Oh my God.
That guy talks like he's a Quaaludes too. Oh my God, he's embarrassing, man. I remember listening to him at one of his videos. He didn't grasp the concept of oceans as heat transport mechanisms. He was like, well, supposedly during the Eocene 50 million years ago, it had warmed up a lot. Well, how could it warm up a lot if the sun wasn't if it was dark for 3 months out of the year? And it was like, man, do you get how any of this stuff works? Like, like all you have to do is crack open a textbook, buddy. You'll learn that oceans transport heat. That's why England's fucking, a temperate climate at whatever insanely high latitude is that. So I don't know, whatever.
It's I don't know how to deal with them. I argue with them so long, and then they don't give up, and they keep.
They're fun. You're not going to convince them, so you got to just fuck with them a little bit.
Yeah.
You can't apply rational argument to someone who's a fucking nitwit. You gotta fuck with them. You gotta troll them. Have fun with it. Make it fun for you. That's what I try to do. I'm not trying to convince them. It's not gonna happen. It's just fun to fuck with them at this point. So.
Oh, cool. I will try doing that instead. Maybe I'll have more fun and not get so pissed off. Let's see. Oh, I had a great question. Val wants to know, and how to identify, never mind, I'm just reading questions from way before. How to identify dangerous plants like poison ivy, oak, and does he have a rule of thumb not to get injured when exploring botanicals? Also, what is your favorite indoor botanical garden in the world? Cincy has, I don't know what Cincy is, has a nice one. Also, have you done, I don't know what that is. AYAHUA.
Ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca, yeah, that drug, huh? That makes you like ayahuasca. That makes you like have some kind of a.
It's a mixture of psychotria, which is in the Rubiaceae, the coffee family. Mm-hmm. But it's a large genus, psychotria. There's hundreds. I think there's 100 or 200 species.
Peyote, is peyote one of those or part of that, or?
No, that's different. All these plants produce these alkaloids not for humans. They produce them as ways to protect themselves, despite what we may want to tell ourselves. We're not that important. They just
right.
happen to have effects on our brains, on mammalian, especially simian brains. No, I haven't done ayahuasca. I don't know how I would. I'm not opposed to it, but I don't have any pressing need right now. But I don't know what family Bensteriopsis is. I should look that up. But what were the first questions
How identifying poisonous plants or dangerous plants like poison ivy, oak, and I'm sure there's more dangerous ones than that.
You learn trademarks of the family that poison ivy is in Anacardiaceae. That's a good start. Anything that is in that family might have the potential to cause dermatitis or induce an allergic reaction in a human being. For instance, there's a plant called Ladrea caustica in that family in Chile. I just saw it, and I was looking at it, and I saw that's quite obviously a sumac. It's in the sumac family. The venation on the leaves look like it. Normally, I mean, you always go by flowers when you're identifying plants, but sometimes a lot of plants will have, trademarks in their leaf structure too. Like a lot of plants in the pea family have pinnate leaves. They're pinnate leaflets on either side of a central rachis. So this plant looked like it was in the sumac family. I touched it because I was just kind of it was like a waxy leaf with entire margins and prominent lighter veins. It looked like a sumac, and then later I read that it can cause atopic dermatitis in people. It didn't cause it in me, probably because I hadn't been sensitized to it yet. I think it's a different compound than the urushiol that causes dermatitis in poison oak and poison ivy. But there's a lot of stuff in their family that just causes dermatitis reactions. There's a lot of plants in the euphorbia family, the poinsettia family, Euphorbiaceae, since a lot of them produce this milky latex that can cause dermatitis too. There's plants in the Boraginaceae, the Phacelia, and the Yerba Santa family that can be known to contain compounds. A lot of plants in that family, the Boraginaceae, have trichomes with glands on them. A lot of them are really hairy and really sticky. And some of those compounds cause allergic reactions to people. So you kind of just learn over time by reading about this. You'll see a plant, you won't know what it was, you look it up, and then you read as like a little footnote on the Wikipedia page or something that it causes dermatitis. And then you just kind of learn, okay, that's a lot of plants in this family seem to do that. That's probably a trademark of this family. And you exercise caution when you encounter plants that are in that family, even if you don't know them yet, Which is like, that's what I did with that plant in Chile. I was like, oh, let's it looks like it's a sumac. It might cause dermatitis.
Yeah, I saw that. Okay. Yeah. That's so, man, I wish I knew as much as you do, but I've been focusing on the climate change thing so much that my brain is so stuffed with information there. I can't even retain all that. I don't know how you retain all your information. You're great. I have a full-time job on top of this, but it is what it is. Human has a great question. Why the hoopla about invasive plants when the earthlings are the invasive ones?
Every time I hear a statement like that, and I don't mean any offense, but that's the most unthinking statement. And it's always made by people who seem to really be bothered by the idea of invasive plants. First off, we're not talking about people being invasive because that's apples and oranges. People have abilities to control their environments. They've got cognizance. They've got consciousness. An organism, whether it's a feral cat or whether it's a mullen or whether it's a tamarisk, is just going to do what it's been programmed to do genetically over the course of evolution, which is respond to its environment and try to survive and overcome obstacles. The key about invasive plants, and this is where people get hung up, is they don't like that word for some reason. They tend to anthropomorphize it. They'll compare it to human xenophobia, which is asinine, or they'll compare it to hatred of immigrants or whatever. You can't do that. And when we're talking about invasive plants, we're basically talking about, you have, first off, to get any idea what this means, you got to grasp the concept of an ecosystem. Ecosystems are communities of organisms, plants, insects, animals, fungi, microbes that exist in a relatively closed system that is isolated from other ecosystems, whether it's by mountain ranges, deserts, oceans, whatever. The equator is a good vicarious barrier, good barrier to gene flow. So these ecosystems evolve. It's like putting a bunch of things in a little can, or in a stadium, and let them duke it out and see which comes out, right? Which goes extinct, which evolves. This all happens over the course of millions of years. These things evolve together. Once that's all done, there have been winners and losers. They reach an equilibrium. Now humans come along in some course over the next however many millions of years, and they take this one organism that evolved in this closed system and they transport it to another closed system 9,000 miles away. Well, just like what happened with smallpox and the Native Americans here, the Native Americans weren't used to this virus when it was brought over. You know, and not every plant that's transported to a new ecosystem is going to behave like a virus. Right. Some are relatively innocuous. You can have them in your garden; they don't escape; they're fine. Some are really, really bad. The system of checks and balances, that whole however many millions of years of duking it out, of there being winners and losers that happened in their old ecosystem, that hasn't happened in the new one that they're transported to. So the system of checks and balances that keeps them in check does not, whether it's insect or another fungus or whatever, it doesn't exist in this new ecosystem. So you bring this one organism to a new ecosystem, and it does immensely well. It's just doing what it's been genetically programmed to do over the course of evolution, which is survive. But it goes beyond that. It starts outcompeting plants and organisms in its new ecosystem. It ends up having a very negative and detrimental effect on its new ecosystem to the point of causing the extinction of plants and animals that may already live in that ecosystem. You know, in the case of animals, I think it was one cat and maybe however many kittens it had that killed an entire species of wren on Stevens Island.
Wow.
You know, that genetic code doesn't exist anymore on planet Earth. It's gone forever because of a cat that a lighthouse keeper brought there that was pregnant and had a bunch of kittens. They decimated the entire population. You know, you see this happening with European buckthorn in the Midwest. You see it happening with Scots broom out here. You see it happening with our native plants in other countries where they've been brought to. You know, what this is a mass disruption of this balance that's been achieved over millions of years of species co-evolving together. I mean, invasive species, you can argue with this all you want. You might not like the wording of it, but invasive species are one of the most effective ways through which humans are causing the mass extinction right now. Like it or not, those are just the facts. I mean, not only that, but they cause, and I'm not one to break things down to economics, I don't give a shit, but the effect that they have on human infrastructure can be in the billions of dollars, you know?
Yeah, I don't care about human infrastructure myself. That's like the least important thing to me. But
some people are morons, and that's the way they see the world. It's only in dollars. You know, zebra mussels brought to Chicago. They've destroyed all the intake valves for Lake Michigan. They've clogged up a lot. You know, I mean, they're having a huge effect there, and it's because there's whatever keeps zebra mussels in check in their native. I think they're from somewhere in Russia or I forget where. That whatever keeps them in check doesn't exist in Lake Michigan. You know, and that's but one of, you know, tens of thousands of examples. You know,
are huge here, invasive species.
What's up?
Carp are big here, invasive species, along with the mussels.
Right. And you know, it's, I don't know. I just, you know, I used to hate eucalyptus because they're really bad in California. They cause basically a wildlife desert. They form a monoculture. But then I see them, then I learned it was just mainly one species, you know, Eucalyptus globulus. And that's even invasive. It can be not invasive. Native species can't be invasive. It's aggressive in its native Australia. I saw eucalyptus in habitat in their ecological context. I gained a new respect for them. I love them now. You know, every organism just has a context. That's what I try to tell people. It's plants and animals aren't just these autonomous entities. They're not just these little horticultural novelties or whatever. They all come with the context of evolution and the ecosystem from which they came from, you know?
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I'm big on like what is natural, what should be existing here, you know, and humans just come in and fuck it all up really easily, really quickly in so many ways.
It's not even in terms of what should or shouldn't. It's just what has been there.
What evolved there, yeah, within the
right, yeah. What's evolved there? It's you know, and these things would happen in the past. They were called dispersal events. You know, with this basically just unaided by human transport of in what I'm concerned about plants from, like there was a species of, we get a little weed out here called Mattia. It's a whole tribe in the sunflower family. We call them the tar weeds. One of those made it to the Hawaiian archipelago 6 million years ago, probably in the plumage of a bird. It was a dispersal event. Who knows if it upset the ecosystem on 6 million-year-old Hawaii or what. But either way, today it evolved into its, the Hawaiian silver swords, which are fantastic plants. It's anybody who doesn't know what they are should look them up right now. So there was a dispersal event. So these things have happened before, but the rate at which they're happening now is just way more than the system can take. I mean, we transport animals and plants and fungi across the globe without any thought of it. Every major tree disease except the pine beetle is an invasive species that was brought here by humans.
Wow, I didn't know that. Wow.
So when people try to argue with me about invasive species and whether it's real or not, I just tell them that. I say, there's your evidence,
So borers, like tree borers, which are big in my area, they're an invasive species?
Yeah, emerald ash borer, hemlock woolly adelgid, invasive. Cryphonectria parasitica, the fungus that killed all the American chestnuts out east, invasive fungus from Asia.
Wow.
Gum disease, invasive fungus brought, transported by beetles, didn't evolve here. It didn't exist on the continent until 120, 130 years ago. White pine blister rust, another invasive fungus, didn't exist here 300 years ago.
Wow.
The pine beetles are really the only one that are native here, and they've been the only reason they're destroying forests because the climate's changing so fast. The precipitation regimes are all fucked up. So.
Wow. Okay. Let's see. Val says, I may have my facts in disorder, but I will proceed with Jurassic. There were no flowers. What do you think caused evolution to create flowering plants? Do you know?
Jesus Christ, I wish I knew. Yeah, I mean, that's right. Yeah, up till 125 million years ago, there weren't flowers. And the first flowers that we saw come out were small and diminutive. The first flowers that we have fossils for were small and diminutive. They weren't showy at all. They were little. I mean, anybody who's a botanist or familiar with flowers would look at them and could tell that, the architecture was there, but it could tell it was a flower. But what caused it, man, I don't know. Fuck, you're asking me. I mean, what I would do to just be able to spend a week in the Jurassic, to like
that would be cool.
See what was going on. Maybe in like a guarded armored tank or something, with transparent windows. But what I would give to see, I mean, think of all the things that haven't been fossilized that we don't know existed. Think about, the ancestors of cycads that existed back then. There were the Benetites or the Benetales, another really fucking weird extinct lineage of plants that were around. I mean, there wasn't. What I would give to look and see what things. And I'm not even talking about the animals or dinosaurs. I would just love to see what the Jurassic flora was like. What caused it? I don't know. Archaea fructus is documented as being the first flower that's a fossil from China.
Mm-hmm.
I don't,
Wow.
I don't know. You look at a magnolia. That's another really old lineage.
Mm-hmm.
You look at a magnolia. I mean, you could see the flower structure on a magnolia. Those little cones they produce. They're very large flowers. They produce these weird shaped cone-looking things that look. I mean, it just looks like a really primitive structure. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's the thing I go to bed thinking about sometimes. How this flower game get going?
Wow.
And furthermore, what existed that we'll never know about because it didn't get fossilized or we haven't found it yet. So.
That's true. I think about that stuff all the time. Like, what don't we know? And I think that's the funnest to think about. And I'm hoping there's something we don't know that's going to save this planet, but I doubt it. I think we're too far gone.
The ability to look in the mirror, that's really all it takes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's coming anytime soon. I'm not an optimist, I'm not. It doesn't affect my motivation at all. But I'm just, I don't have a a good sense of, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing because I enjoy doing it. But I don't think, I think things are going to kind of run their course. There's not much we can do. It sucks, but.
Yeah, it does, especially when there's so many deniers, so many people trying to spread fake science, like the grand solar minimalists and people like that. It's like we are so fucked when that is what's going on in our world, where people don't even. There's one gal that's on here on and off, Pat the hacker. She's like, when you start talking about climate change, she's like, oh, I'm out. And she knows I talk about that on my channel. She jumps in every once in a while on other topics. It's not exactly climate change, maybe some environmental destruction. But the minute you talk about climate change, I'm out. She doesn't want to hear it. She doesn't believe it. She's done.
It's really odd. I mean, for me, I guess I'm kind of fascinated by it because I want to get inside their brain. I want to figure out, I just want to know what bothers them so much about it.
I know. It's like,
do they really think that this is just a liberal versus conservative thing? Is it the idea that the world is so small now and that humans can affect it? Is that what scares them? Like, what makes them so mad? It's like, to me, it's like someone telling me that the sky is blue and me getting upset about it. Like, it doesn't affect me one way or the other. It just is. I don't need to let it threaten my existential being, my existential outlook.
The thing I get is like, if you talk about that, we're going to end up with socialism. So don't talk about climate change because it's a trick to, the adapt 2030 bullshit, that it's all a plot to bring in socialism and communism and all that.
Yeah, they're just morons that got duped by, they're like the old people in Iowa that get scared that the fucking Mexicans are coming for them or something.
I have all that in this state, all in one. Mexicans are coming for you. Socialism's coming for you. God.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I mean, and this isn't even left or right. I just look at people like that and I'm like, man, they didn't, they're not, those are the people who get taken advantage of by, they get that phone call from someone pretending to be the Social Security Administration. They're just not too fucking bright,
Or get involved in a Ponzi scheme.
Right, yeah. I mean, and that's not political. It's not coming from left or right. People who see that and believe that, Jesus Christ, man, you have no critical thinking skills. All right.
I agree 100%. I'm with you. Okay, so I've taken up more than an hour and a half of your time. I don't see any new questions. I probably missed some, but the questions go by so fast, it's ridiculous. We did have pretty good audience, so thank you guys all for coming. If you want to hold on a minute, Joey, we're gonna send it out with a song that I kind of think fits the bill, and then just let me talk to you for a second after that. Can you do that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
All right, cool. Thank you guys for coming. I'll try and leave the chat up a little bit so you guys can have a chat, but listen to this great song on our way out, and we will see you tomorrow. Oh my gosh, too many shows this week. Have a good one. Bye, guys.
It's all going to pot, whether we like it or not. Best I can tell, the world's gone to hell, and we're sure gonna miss it a lot. All the whiskey in Lynchburg, Tennessee, just doesn't hit the spot. Got $100 bill, friend, you can keep your pills, 'cause it's all gone to pot. That crackle cobble head in a box must think I'm dumb as a rock. Reading the daily news while kicking off my shoes, it's scaring me out of my socks. The red-headed stranger I'm not, but buddy, let me tell you what. If you ask old Will, he'll tell you here's the deal. Friends, it's all gone to pot. It's all gone to pot, whether we like it or not. Best I can tell, the world's gone to hell, and we're sure gonna miss it a lot. Well, I thought I found me a girl, sweetest little thing in the world. But all my jokes went up in smoke when I caught her making eyes at Merle. Said sweet little honey with her eye on your money, gonna take every penny you got. Said she's never gonna get it 'cause I've already spent it. Merle, it's all gone to pot. It's all gone to pot, whether we like it or not. Best I can tell, the world's gone to hell, and we're sure gonna miss it a lot. All the whiskey in Lynchburg, Tennessee, just couldn't hit the spot. Got $100 bill, you can keep your pills, friend. It's all gone to pot. It's all gone to pot, whether we like it or not.